In most probable configurations of your timeline, humanity either destroys itself or transcends sequential perception through technological means. Your decision nexus represents a statistically improbable third outcome, asterisk, which is the preservation of sequential perception as a valid mode of existence, despite awareness of alternatives. Elena frowned. You're saying most humans either die out or eventually evolve to perceive time the way you do. But somehow, my choices lead to a different outcome. Asterisk correct. This anomaly requires investigation. Asterisk, a thought struck Elena, one so troubling she almost didn't want to voice it. Are you studying me to determine if sequential perception should be eliminated as inefficient? Asterisk elimination implies a value judgment and temporal progression. All possible states exist simultaneously. The question is one of relative validity, not existence. Asterisk that wasn't exactly reassuring. I think I understand, Elena said slowly. You can't comprehend why beings would choose to remain limited to sequential time if they had an alternative. You want to understand what value we find in our linear existence. Asterisk your comprehension is improving. The persistence of sequential perception despite knowledge of alternatives violates efficiency predictions. Asterisk, not everything is about efficiency, Elena argued. Sometimes the limitations themselves create value. Art, love, courage, hope. These emerge from our sequential experience of time, from not knowing what comes next. Yet these emergent properties are ultimately patterns of matter and energy, no different in fundamental composition from any other configuration. The difference is in the experience, Elena insisted, in the meaning we create by moving through time, making choices without knowledge of their outcomes. The ship suddenly lurched violently, throwing Elena against her restraints. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. Adia, what's happening? Temporal shielding experiencing harmonic disruption. Unexpected resonance pattern detected. Shield failure imminent. Elena's hands raced across the controls, trying to stabilize the shields. Reroute emergency power to the temporal stabilizers. Adjust harmonic frequency to compensate. Asterisk your technology cannot withstand prolonged exposure to this environment. This physical interface will fail. Asterisk, I'm not giving up. Elena gritted through clenched teeth. Aria, initiate emergency protocol Omega-7. Initiating protocol Omega-7. Warning. This procedure has never been tested under current conditions. Omega-7 was a last resort measure, designed to create a bubble of normal space-time around the ship by generating a counterphase temporal field. In theory, it would cancel out external temporal distortions within a limited radius. In practice, no one knew if it would work or simply tear the ship apart faster. The lights dimmed as the ship diverted all available power to the newly forming field. Elena held her breath, watching the shield diagnostics anxiously. Omega-7 field stabilizing, Aria reported after several tense seconds. Temporal normalcy achieved within immediate ship perimeter. However, power consumption is unsustainable. Estimated maintenance duration, 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Not long, but maybe enough. Asterisk you continue to adapt despite overwhelming probability of failure. Explain this persistence. Asterisk, that's humanity for you, Elena said, allowing herself a grim smile. We don't know when quit. Now, I have 17 minutes before this field fails. I need to make them count. She turned to the sensor readings, which were now providing clearer data thanks to the stabilized temporal field around the ship. Aria, what are we seeing? The anomaly appears to be a nexus point where multiple timelines intersect. Quantum data suggests it may be artificially maintained rather than a natural phenomenon. Elena's eyes widened. Artificially maintained? You mean it was created deliberately? Asterisk, created implies temporal causality. More accurate. It is an interface point that I utilize. Asterisk, for what purpose? Observation and study of sequential phenomena. Elena stared at the readings, a new understanding dawning. This isn't just an anomaly. It's a laboratory. You are studying time itself and the beings that experience it linearly. Asterisk, your comprehension continues to improve. Yes, this nexus allows detailed observation of sequential perception across multiple timelines. Asterisk, how long have you been watching us? Asterisk, duration is meaningless from my perspective. I observe all points of your timeline simultaneously. Asterisk, Elena shook her head. That doesn't make sense. If you observe all of time at once, why would you need to study anything? You'd already know all possible outcomes. Another pause, longer than before. Asterisk, observation and knowledge are not equivalent. The former may exist without the latter. Though I perceive all states simultaneously, understanding sequential value assessments requires additional investigation. Asterisk, something clicked in Elena's mind. You perceive everything, but you don't understand everything, especially things that are unique to sequential experience. Asterisk, correct. This is the anomaly under investigation. Asterisk, so you need me, or someone like me, to explain why we value our linear perception of time, even though it's limited and inefficient by your standards. Asterisk, the persistence of inefficient systems requires explanation. All evidence suggests sequential beings should evolve towards simultaneous perception once they understand its possibility. Yet some resist this evolution despite awareness. Asterisk, Elena leaned back in her chair, thinking, maybe because we recognize that we'd lose something essential in the process. What could be lost when gaining access to all knowledge across all timelines? Purpose, Elena said simply, meaning the journey itself. If I experience my entire life simultaneously, birth, death, every joy and sorrow all at once, what would be the point of existing at all? The entity was silent for a long moment. Asterisk, this concept of purpose requires further examination. It appears central to sequential value systems. Asterisk, it is, Elena confirmed. Humans need purpose, a reason to move forward through time, goals to achieve, experiences to have, people to love. The fact that we don't know what will happen next is what makes life worth living. Asterisk, even negative experiences? Suffering? Death? Asterisk, especially those, Elena said softly. The fragility of our existence, our limited time, is what makes each moment precious. It's why we fight so hard to survive, to connect, to create something lasting. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Omega-7 field destabilizing, Arya warned. 11 minutes remaining before critical failure. Elena turned back to the controls, checking the sensors. Arya, are we recording all this data? Affirmative, Commander. All sensor readings are being stored in isolated quantum memory banks, protected from temporal distortion. Good. Elena turned her attention back to the entity. Chronos, I need to understand something. Why show yourself to me specifically? Why now? Asterisk, your arrival at this nexus point represents a decision node with unusual probability distribution. Multiple significant timeline branches originate from this interaction. Asterisk, you are saying my choices right now will have major consequences? For the future of sequential perception among your species? Yes, the implication was staggering. Somehow, this encounter, her decisions here, would shape humanity's future relationship with time itself. What choices? What am I supposed to do? Asterisk, I cannot provide that information without invalidating the observation. The value of your decision derives from its sequential nature, made without foreknowledge of outcomes. Asterisk, Elena felt frustration rising. So you put me in this impossible situation, tell me my choices are critically important, but won't tell me what those choices are or what they will lead to. Asterisk, correct. This is the essence of sequential existence that requires study, decision-making under conditions of incomplete information. Asterisk, that's not fair. Asterisk, fairness is a sequential value judgment predicated on causal relationships. It has no meaning in simultaneous perception. Asterisk, Elena took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Getting angry at an entity that couldn't comprehend human emotions was pointless. Okay, let me think this through. She stared at the swirling chaos visible through the view screen. You exist outside of time, observing all possible timelines simultaneously. Yet something about sequential perception, about how beings like me experience reality, puzzles you. Specifically, why we would choose to remain limited to linear time, even if we had alternatives. Your summary is accurate. And somehow, my decisions here will influence whether humanity maintains its sequential perception or evolves beyond it. Also accurate. Elena frowned. But I don't even know what technology would allow humans to transcend linear time. That knowledge is far beyond our current science. In many timelines, your return from this encounter accelerates development of such technology by several centuries. That gave Elena pause. Because of the data I bring back. Asterisk data and something more. Conceptual frameworks. New understandings of temporal physics derived from this interaction. Asterisk the implications were enormous. If she returned to Earth with knowledge that led to humans transcending their linear perception of time, would that be a gift to her species or the end of what made them human? Omega-7 field at 60%, Arya announced. 8 minutes remaining. Time was running out, ironically enough. Elena needed to make a decision, but what exactly was she deciding? Whether to return with the data? Whether to destroy it? Something else entirely. Chronos, she said firmly. I need more information. What exactly happens in the timelines where humanity transcends sequential perception? Asterisk, they cease to be recognizably human by your current standards. They exist across all points of their lifelines simultaneously, without discrete consciousness as you understand it. Asterisk, and they choose this willingly. Asterisk choice becomes meaningless when all possibilities exist simultaneously. It simply occurs as one of many possible configurations. Asterisk, a chill ran down Elena's spine. They lose their humanity, their individuality, their free will. Asterisk, these concepts are artifacts of sequential perception. They are replaced by a more comprehensive mode of existence. Asterisk, but is it better? Elena said. Are these post-human beings happier, more fulfilled? Do they create art, feel love, experience wonder? Asterisk, these questions contain sequential value assumptions that do not translate. Different is the only accurate descriptor. Asterisk, Elena stood up from her chair and paced the small bridge, thinking furiously. The entity couldn't, or wouldn't, tell her exactly what choice she was facing. But it seemed clear that the data she brought back from this encounter could set humanity on a path to transcending linear time, becoming something unrecognizable by current human standards. And in the timelines where this doesn't happen, where humans remain sequential beings, asterisk, they continue much as they have. Some timelines end in extinction. Others achieve interstellar civilization while maintaining sequential perception. The variety is extensive, but all remain fundamentally limited by linear temporality. Asterisk, limited, but human, Elena murmured. She turned to the main console, looking at the massive amount of data being collected and stored. Scientific readings that would revolutionize physics. Insights into the nature of time that would transform human understanding of reality itself. Knowledge that would eventually lead to technologies allowing humans to transcend their linear experience of time. Arya, if I were to erase the quantum memory banks, would that eliminate all the data we have collected here? Affirmative, Commander. The isolated nature of the quantum storage means no backups exist elsewhere in the ship's systems. However, such action would violate mission protocols and potentially constitute sabotage. Elena nodded slowly. Understood. You are contemplating destroying the data, the entity observed. This would significantly alter probable timeline distributions. Would humanity still eventually develop the technology to transcend linear time without this data? Asterisk, yes, but with significantly delayed probability. Most such timelines occur thousands of years in your future rather than within the next several centuries. Asterisk, thousands of years instead of centuries. Time for humanity to evolve culturally and philosophically along with its technology. Time to decide collectively whether transcending linear existence was truly desirable, rather than rushing into it based on one mission's discoveries. And what about me? Elena asked. In the timelines where I destroy the data, do I still make it back to Earth? Hvězdička probability distributions vary. In approximately 63% of such timelines, Elena Reyes returns to Earth with basic observational data, but without the critical temporal physics insights that would accelerate technological development. Asterisk, not great odds, but better than she'd expected. Elena looked around the bridge of the Chronos, the ship she called home for nearly 3 years. She thought about Earth, about humanity struggling with its limited lifespan, its fragmentary understanding of the universe, its linear progression through time. And she thought about what it meant to be human, to make choices without knowing their outcomes, to experience joy and sorrow sequentially, to create meaning through the journey of life rather than experiencing it all at once. Omega-7 field at 30%, Arya warned. For minutes until failure. Decision time. Elena moved to the quantum storage controls. Arya prepared to purge all quantum memory related to temporal physics anomalies. Warning. This action will delete irreplaceable scientific data. Command authorization required. Authorization Reyes Epsilon 937. Execute on my mark. This action significantly alters your timeline distribution, the entity noted. Curious. I'm choosing humanity as it is limited, sequential, but uniquely human over what it might become if it transcends too quickly. Asterisk, you choose inefficiency and limitation over transcendence. This requires further study. Asterisk, that's just it, Elena said, finger hovering over the purge command. You keep framing sequential existence as inefficient and limited. But what if it's actually valuable precisely because of those limitations? What if the constraints of linear time are what make human existence meaningful? This perspective contradicts logical optimization principles. Humans aren't logical optimizers. We are meaning makers. Our sequential journey through time allows us to create value that can't exist in a simultaneous perspective. The ship lurched violently again. Warning lights flashed across all consoles. Omega-7 field critical, Arya announced. 2 minutes until failure. It was now or never. Elena pressed the command, initiating the purge of the quantum memory banks. The console flashed with confirmation prompts, which she rapidly approved. Quantum memory purge complete, Arya reported. All specialized temporal physics data deleted. Basic mission logs and standard observations remain intact. Elena felt a curious mixture of loss and relief. She had just destroyed data that would have revolutionized human understanding of physics and reality itself. Data that might eventually have led to humanity transcending its limited, linear existence. Yet she had also preserved what she believed made humans uniquely valuable. Their sequential experience of time, their ability to create meaning through limitation and choice. I have made my choice, she said to the entity. I choose humanity as it is, not what it might become too quickly. Asterisk choice noted. This outcome exists as one probability strand among many. In other timelines, different versions of Elena Reyes make different decisions. Asterisk, but in this timeline, my timeline, this is my decision. And it matters to me, even if all possibilities exist simultaneously for you. The ship shook violently once more. The view screen showed the swirling chaos of the anomaly beginning to close in around them as the Omega-7 field collapsed. Omega-7 field failure imminent, Arya warned. 30 seconds remaining. Prepare emergency temporal jump, Elena ordered, strapping herself back into her command chair. Use remaining power to attempt transition back to normal spacetime. Calculating jump parameters. Warning, success probability below 30%. Execute Anomaly Elena commanded. She had made her choice to preserve humanity's sequential nature, at least for the near future. Now, she just had to try to survive to tell the tale. Asterisk, your persistence in the face of low probability outcomes remains a subject of interest. Asterisk, the entity commented. This will be studied further. Study all you want, Elena replied, gripping her chair as the ship began to shake apart around her. Just know that some things can only be understood by experiencing them sequentially. Some values can't be calculated or observed from outside time. Emergency temporal jump initiating in 5, 4, 3. Arya counted down. Elena closed her eyes, thinking of Earth, of humanity, of the linear journey that gave life its meaning. If she died here, at least she would die fully human, making choices that mattered to her, if not to an entity that experienced all possibilities simultaneously. 2, 1 jump. The ship lurched violently one last time. The view screen became a blur of impossible colors and geometries. Elena felt her consciousness stretching, compressing, fragmenting across multiple moments in time. And then darkness claimed her once more. Hashtag part 3. Elena Reyes opened her eyes to the steady beep of medical monitors. For a moment, she was disoriented, uncertain where or when she was. The sterile white ceiling above her could have been anywhere. The Chronos, a hospital on Earth, or some other place entirely. Commander Reyes? Can you hear me? The voice was human, concerned, professional. Elena turned her head slightly, wincing at the stiffness in her neck. A doctor in a standard Earth Medical Authority uniform stood beside her bed, checking readings on a holographic display. Where am I? Elena managed, her voice raspy from disuse. Lunar Medical Facility, the doctor replied. You are safe. Your ship emerged from the anomaly 3 weeks ago and was intercepted by emergency response vessels. You have been unconscious since then. Lunar Facility. 3 weeks. The information came in fragments, pieces of a linear narrative that her mind struggled to assemble. The Chronos? She asked. Damaged, but salvageable. The engineering teams are calling it a miracle that you made it back at all. Elena closed her eyes again, memories flooding back. The anomaly. The entity that called itself Chronos. The choice she had made to delete the quantum data that might have accelerated humanity's transcendence beyond linear time. The mission data, she began. The doctor nodded. Most of it was lost, unfortunately. The quantum storage systems were completely wiped, but the basic observational data and your ship's log remained intact. Enough to confirm you encountered something extraordinary out there. Relief washed over Elena. Her choice had held. The critical temporal physics data that might have changed humanity's path too quickly was gone. When can I speak to Mission Control? She asked. They have been waiting for you to regain consciousness. I can arrange a communication link once we have completed your medical evaluation. Over the next few days, Elena underwent extensive testing. Physically, she was remarkably unharmed considering what she'd been through. Neurologically, there were some anomalies, brain wave patterns that occasionally showed unusual temporal synchronization, but nothing that impaired her function or cognition. A week after waking, she sat in a comfortable room in the lunar facility, facing a wall-sized screen that displayed the serious faces of Mission Control's leadership back on Earth. Commander Reyes, Director Chen began, we are all immensely relieved to see you alive. When we lost contact with the Chronos, many feared the worst. Elena nodded. I'm grateful to have made it back, Director. We have reviewed the data that survived, another official said. While the loss of the quantum storage is unfortunate, what remains is still revolutionary. Your observations of the anomaly will keep our physicists busy for decades. What exactly happened out there, Commander? Chen asked. Your mission logs become fragmented at the critical moment of contact with the anomaly. Elena had spent days preparing for this question, carefully considering how much to reveal. The entity had said that in 63% of timelines where she deleted the data, she returned to Earth. She was living in one of those timelines now. But how much should she share about what she had learned? About the entity that existed outside of time, observing all possibilities simultaneously? About the choice she had made to preserve humanity's sequential nature? The anomaly was not what we expected, she began carefully. It appears to be a region where multiple timelines intersect, where the normal laws of physics, particularly those governing temporal progression, break down. Like a natural wormhole, someone suggested. Not exactly. It's more like a window or an interface point where different modes of temporal existence connect. She saw the confusion on their faces. Without the direct experience of the entity, without feeling its simultaneous perception of all timelines, they couldn't truly comprehend what she was describing. The quantum data loss is unfortunate, she continued, but perhaps fortuitous in a way. What I encountered suggests that humanity isn't ready for complete understanding of temporal physics. Not yet. We need time, linear, sequential time, to evolve culturally and philosophically before we attempt to transcend our current perception of reality. Director Chun frowned. Commander, are you suggesting you deliberately destroyed the data? Elena met his gaze steadily through the screen. I'm suggesting that some knowledge needs to be approached gradually, with wisdom rather than just intelligence. The anomaly showed me possibilities for humanity's future that were concerning. What kinds of possibilities? Another scientist asked, leaning forward with interest. Futures where we transcend our linear experience of time too quickly before we are ready. Where we gain a new form of existence, but lose what makes us uniquely human in the process. The room fell silent as they considered her words. You sound like you were speaking from direct experience, Commander, Chun said finally. As if you communicated with something out there. Elena took a deep breath. This was the critical moment. How much to reveal about Chronos, about its simultaneous perception, about its study of sequential beings. I believe the anomaly itself is a product of an intelligence that experiences time differently than we do, she said carefully. An entity that exists outside our linear time stream, perceiving all possibilities simultaneously. She saw skepticism on some faces, cautious interest on others. You were talking about an alien intelligence, Chen stated. Yes, but alien doesn't quite capture it. This entity isn't just from another planet or even another dimension. It exists perpendicular to our reality, outside time, as we experience it. And you communicated with this entity, in a way. Direct communication was difficult. Its perception is so fundamentally different from ours that translation into sequential language was limited. One of the scientists leaned forward. Commander, if such an entity exists, the implications for physics, for our understanding of reality itself, are staggering. I know, Elena said solemnly. That's why I believe we need to approach this knowledge carefully. The entity sees all timelines simultaneously, including futures where humanity develops technology to transcend linear time within the next few centuries, if we gain too much knowledge too quickly from this encounter. And you consider this problematic? Chen asked. I do, Elena said firmly. Sequential perception, experiencing time linearly, moment by moment, is fundamental to what makes us human. It gives rise to choice, meaning, purpose, creativity. Transcending it might bring knowledge, but at the cost of our humanity itself. The officials exchanged glances, clearly struggling with the philosophical implications of her statements. We will need time to process this, Commander, Chun said finally. Your full debriefing will continue over the coming weeks. For now, focus on your recovery. After the communication ended, Elena stood at the window of her room, looking out at the stark lunar landscape. The Earth hung in the black sky, a blue marble containing billions of human lives, each experiencing reality one moment at a time, each creating meaning through the journey rather than its totality. Had she made the right choice? In destroying the quantum data, she had merely delayed humanity's eventual transcendence beyond linear time, not prevented it entirely. According to the entity, humans would still develop the technology thousands of years in the future rather than centuries. Would that additional time allow for the wisdom to accompany the knowledge? Would future humans choose differently when faced with the possibility of transcending sequential existence? Asterisk choice noted. This outcome exists as one probability strand among many. Asterisk the thought appeared in her mind so suddenly that Elena gasped, spinning around to scan the empty room. Chronos, she whispered. Asterisk sequential language requires discrete identity designation. Chronos remains serviceable. Asterisk the entity was here, or rather, its communication could reach her even on the moon, even after she had left the anomaly behind. How is this possible? Elena asked aloud, though she knew the entity could perceive her thoughts directly. The anomaly is light years away. Asterisk distance is a sequential concept tied to three-dimensional space. I exist perpendicular to your dimensional framework. All points are equally accessible. Asterisk, why contact me now? I made my choice. Asterisk your choice represents one probability strand of particular interest. Sequential decision-making under conditions of incomplete information produced an outcome with low prior probability. This requires further study. Asterisk, you are still trying to understand why I chose to preserve humanity's sequential nature, even at the cost of advancement. Asterisk correct. This choice contradicts optimization principles, yet persists across multiple, significant timelines. Asterisk Elena smiled sadly. You still don't get it, do you? The value of our sequential existence can't be calculated or optimized. It can only be experienced. Asterisk, this remains the central anomaly under investigation. The persistence of this position despite logical contradictions suggests an emergent property of sequential perception that transcends current analytical frameworks. Asterisk. Maybe that's the point, Elena said softly. Maybe there are forms of value, of meaning, that can only emerge from limitation, from experiencing reality one moment at a time, from making choices without knowing their outcomes. A hypothesis worthy of continued observation. Elena felt a strange sense of peace. The entity would continue to watch, to study, to try to understand the value humans found in their limited, linear experience of time. Perhaps someday, thousands of years in the future, humanity would choose to transcend that limitation, to join the entity in simultaneous perception of all possibilities. Or perhaps they would find a third way, preserving what was essential about sequential experience while gaining new perspective. But that choice would not be forced upon them too soon, not accelerated by the knowledge Elena might have brought back. She had given humanity time, linear, sequential time, to evolve at its own pace, to find its own path forward. "Will you continue to communicate with me?" she asked, intermittently. "Your particular nexus point remains statistically significant across multiple timelines. Further observation is warranted. I'm just one human among billions. Yet your choice reverberates across probability distributions in unusual patterns. You represent an anomaly within an anomaly, a sequential being who values sequential limitations despite awareness of alternatives." Elena turned back to the window, gazing at the Earth hanging in the void. Billions of human lives, each experiencing their journey one step at a time, each creating meaning through limitation and choice. "Perhaps that's humanity's gift to the universe," she said softly. "Not transcendence, but the meaning we create within our limitations. The value we find in the journey itself, not just its totality." The entity did not respond, but Elena sensed it was still present, observing, studying, perhaps even beginning to understand. In time, she would return to Earth. She would share what she had learned. Not the critical temporal physics that might accelerate humanity's transcendence beyond linear time, but the philosophical insights, the understanding that sequential existence had value precisely because of its limitations, and somewhere perpendicular to reality as humans perceived it. An entity that experienced all possibilities simultaneously would continue to study the anomaly of beings who chose limitation over transcendence, who found meaning in the journey rather than its totality, who created value through sequential experience that could not exist in simultaneous perception. Perhaps, Elena thought, that was meaning enough for one human lifetime, to expand not just humanity's knowledge, but an incomprehensible entity's understanding of what it meant to be human. To be sequential, to be limited, to be beautifully, meaningfully finite in a potentially infinite cosmos. To move through time one precious moment at a time, creating meaning with each choice, each step forward into an unknown future. Humanity, with all its limitations, still had something to teach the universe, and that, Elena decided, was worth fighting for.